The house had grown too quiet. Even the ticking clock on the mantel seemed ashamed of how loudly it filled the silence. Reuben Gray sat at the dining table, a single plate of stew cooling before him, steam rising like a ghost that had no place left to haunt. Across from him, the second chair remained neatly tucked in, untouched for 3 years, the chair his wife, Martha, had once claimed as if it were stitched into her bones. He never moved it, never let it scrape against the wood, never dared break the illusion that maybe, just maybe, she'd walk in, apron tied crookedly, and scold him for letting supper go cold. But the chair stayed empty. On the table beside his untouched spoon lay a photograph, edges worn from his restless hands. 2 children, a boy of 10, a girl of 8, caught mid-laughter in a burst of summer sunlight. Simon's hair stuck up where he'd been too impatient for a comb, and Grace's pigtails blurred as she turned toward the camera. Their joy had been preserved in glossy print, but the real thing, the sound of their giggles, the way their arms once flung around his neck, had been gone too long. Reuben rubbed his thumb across the photo as though he could feel their warmth through the paper. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been close enough to hold them. The phone rang. His heart jumped. He snatched it up, straightening in his seat as though posture could disguise loneliness. "Hello, Dad. It's me." Seth's voice came through, tired and distracted. Reuben could hear the distant sounds of life. Television chatter, a pan clattering, children arguing about something trivial. He could almost see it, that busy, messy household only 20 minutes away, a world that excluded him. "I was just wondering," Reuben began, forcing brightness into his voice. "What might be nice for Mabel's birthday? Thought I'd get her something." A pause. Too long. He imagined Seth pinching the bridge of his nose, calculating how to answer. We're not doing anything grand," Seth muttered at last. "Just a small dinner. Closest people. Closest people." The words landed in Reuben's chest like stones dropped into deep water. He pressed the photo tighter against his palm. "I see. Well, maybe flowers then," Reuben said softly. "Would that do? I'll talk to Mabel about it. Maybe we'll invite you." The line thinned with static. A child's voice broke through, Grace's. "Dad. Simon won't share." Seth muffled the receiver. When he returned, his tone had grown impatient. "Listen, dinner's getting cold. Thanks for calling, Dad." And then silence. Reuben held the phone to his ear long after the line had gone dead, staring across the table at the empty chair, at the steamless bowl of stew, at the photograph clutched in his trembling hand. Somewhere across the city, his family sat down to eat together. He imagined them laughing. He imagined being part of it. Instead, he circled a date on the calendar. Mabel's birthday, Thursday, and whispered to the chair across from him, "This time, I won't be forgotten." Thursday loomed on the calendar like a bright red wound, circled twice in his shaky handwriting. Reuben caught himself glancing at it too often, as if the date might vanish if he didn't keep watch. That morning, the sky was overcast, clouds heavy with the promise of rain. He busied himself in the garden, kneeling in the damp soil, coaxing stubborn tomato plants into straight rows. The earth still smelled like Martha, like the afternoons they had spent out here, her laughter floating through the air as she taught him the difference between tending and simply planting. The phone rang from inside. He rose too quickly, joints protesting, and wiped his soil-stained hands on his flannel shirt before rushing in. Unknown number. "Hello, this is Reuben." "Reuben, it's Mabel." Her voice was brisk, clipped, the way a boss might speak to an employee. No warmth, no wasted syllables. He straightened, as though she could see him through the receiver. "Mabel, good to hear from you. I'm calling about Thursday," she continued. He fumbled for his notebook, pen scratching the page before she even finished. "It will be at Lakeview Manor. 7 o'clock sharp. Formal attire. Bring a suitable gift." Lakeview Manor. He'd heard of it, an elegant estate overlooking the water, the kind of place that catered to people who signed contracts with fountain pens rather than ballpoints. "I'll be there," he said quickly, afraid hesitation might cancel the invitation. "Thank you, truly, for including me." There was a pause, the faint sound of typing on her end. Please don't be late. It's important that everything runs smoothly. And then the line clicked dead. Reuben lowered the phone slowly. His notes on the page were uneven, his hand trembling. Lakeview Manor. 7 o'clock. Gift. Formal. The word formal mocked him. His closet offered nothing more than a navy suit purchased for Martha's funeral. He ran his thumb along the notebook's edge, imagining the silent judgment waiting in that marble dining hall. Still, it was something, a chance. He drove to the mall the next day, weaving through crowds of teenagers and hurried mothers. Stores gleamed with bright lights and mannequins that wore more money in one outfit than his entire pension check. At one counter, a saleswoman eyed him with polite suspicion as he fingered a silk scarf. "Birthday gift?" she asked, voice dripping with professional patience. "Yes, for my daughter-in-law." He hesitated. "She's important to my son." The scarf shimmered like water between his hands. Soft blue, elegant, understated. He thought of Martha saying that the right gift was never about money, but about paying attention. He remembered Mabel wearing blue at Easter, the only detail he could recall about her beyond her cool eyes. He bought the scarf, even though the price made his chest tighten. The clerk wrapped it in silver paper, tied with a ribbon precise enough to look effortless. Back home, he set the package on the table beside Martha's empty chair. He stood back, studying it like a man who had built something fragile. "Do you think she'll like it?" he asked the silence. The chair, as always, gave no answer. Only the calendar did, its red circle glowing brighter with every glance. Thursday evening arrived with a clear sky that felt almost cruel in its brightness. Reuben had been ready since 5, pacing the small living room, checking his reflection in the hallway mirror every few minutes. His suit sagged slightly at the shoulders, his tie knotted too tightly against his throat, but he stood straighter, pretending it fit as well as the tailored jackets he'd seen on Seth's social media. The scarf, wrapped in silver and blue, sat on the passenger seat of his Buick like a fragile passenger. He rested a hand on it before starting the ignition. "Don't let me down," he muttered, as if the gift itself carried the weight of his redemption. The highway stretched ahead, 23 miles of asphalt between him and Lakeview Manor. His palms sweated against the wheel. Every song on the radio reminded him of Martha, her humming as she stirred soup, her hand warm on his as they danced once, long ago, to Moon River in a borrowed tuxedo. He shut the radio off. Tonight wasn't about ghosts. Tonight was about proving he still mattered. 20 minutes into the drive, the sky began to bruise with the colors of dusk. That was when he saw her. A car sat stranded on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking like frantic eyes. Beside it stood a woman in her 40s, hair pinned loosely back, blouse marked with a grease smudge where she'd leaned too close to the hood. She looked both dignified and out of place, her posture sharp even in distress. Reuben's foot hovered over the accelerator. He checked the dashboard clock, 6:25. If he stopped, he would be late. If he drove on, he might still arrive at Lakeview Manor just in time. His grip tightened on the wheel. Martha's voice rose unbidden in his mind, soft but firm. "Reuben Gray, what good is a man if he drives past someone in need?" He pulled over. The gravel crunched under his shoes as he approached. "Evening, ma'am." Trouble under the hood. Relief washed across her features. "Thank God. It just died. I don't know why." Reuben leaned into the engine compartment, years of muscle memory guiding his hands. A corroded battery terminal, an alternator refusing to feed life back into the system. Nothing he hadn't seen before. "Battery's gone weak," he said. "Lucky for you, I've got cables." As he worked, she watched, not with helplessness, but with sharp, intelligent curiosity. She asked questions about voltage, about the way corrosion ate away at connections, as if she truly cared to understand. When the engine roared back to life, her smile softened into something genuine. "You've saved me. What do I owe you?" He shook his head, wiping his hands on an old rag. "Nothing. My wife always said kindness isn't a bill you send someone." Her eyes lingered on him, studying, weighing. "And where are you headed tonight, Mr. Gray?" "Reuben Gray. My daughter-in-law's birthday. At Lakeview Manor." Something flickered across her expression. Amusement, recognition, something he couldn't read. She only said, "Well, Mr. Gray, I have a feeling we'll meet again sooner than you think." He chuckled politely, though unease threaded through his chest. When he finally slid back behind the wheel, the clock glared at him. 6:50. Too late to arrive unnoticed. The gift sat where he'd left it, silver paper catching the dying light. For the first time that evening, Reuben wondered if he'd made the wrong choice. But as the Buick merged back onto the highway, Martha's voice lingered like a benediction. Better late with kindness than early with nothing at all. By the time Reuben's Buick rolled into the circular drive of Lakeview Manor, the sky had gone black and the chandeliers spilling from its grand windows glowed like a palace in a storybook. A valet in a crisp jacket opened his door before he could collect himself. Reuben stepped out carefully, clutching the silver-wrapped gift like a lifeline. His suit suddenly felt 2 sizes too big beneath the gleam of the Bentleys and BMWs lined up along the entrance. "Enjoy your evening, sir," the valet said politely, though his glance lingered on the battered Buick as it was driven away. Inside, Reuben paused. Piano music swelled through the air, elegant and practiced, every note wrapped in wealth. Tables glittered with crystal and candlelight. Waiters moved with precision. Trays balanced effortlessly as laughter rose from groups in designer gowns and tailored suits. He spotted her immediately, Mabel, standing near the head table, her black dress cut sharp as glass, her voice carrying confidently as she spoke to 3 men in business attire. She looked radiant, polished, untouchable, like someone who had curated her life down to the last polished syllable. Reuben approached slowly, heart hammering. "Happy birthday, Mabel." He extended the gift with both hands, his voice trembling despite his best efforts. "I hope it suits you." Her smile froze. A flash of annoyance crossed her face before she smoothed it into composure. She took the gift with fingertips, as though it might smudge her manicure, and set it immediately on a side table without unwrapping it. "Thank you, Reuben," she said coolly, already turning back to her circle. He cleared his throat. "Where should I sit? I'd love to be near Simon and Grace." This time she didn't even mask the calculation behind her eyes. She gestured toward the farthest corner of the hall where a small table had been tucked beside swinging kitchen doors. 2 waiters and a busboy sat there eating their dinners quietly. No tablecloth, no centerpiece. "There," she said. "We didn't have space at the main table. I trust you understand." The words were gentle enough for the crowd to hear, but the cruelty beneath them cut like ice. Reuben followed her pointing finger, his chest tight. Across the room, he spotted Simon and Grace in their best clothes, seated among the glowing faces of the main table. Grace noticed him and lifted a tentative hand, but Mabel's manicured fingers pressed her daughter's wrist back to her lap. Reuben's throat burned. Still, he nodded. "Of course," he murmured, forcing a dignity he didn't feel. At the corner table, the staff shifted to make room for him. One young waiter slid his bread plate toward Reuben. "Tough crowd," the boy whispered. "But you're welcome here." From his exile, Reuben could see everything. The swirl of Mabel's laughter, the way Seth hovered at the bar, glass in hand, avoiding his father's gaze, and his grandchildren stealing glances toward him with confusion that sliced deeper than words ever could. The piano music grew brighter, but to Reuben it sounded like static. He sat with the staff, back straight, hands folded, pretending he didn't notice the shame clinging to him like smoke. In that moment, he realized the truth. Mabel hadn't invited him out of kindness. She had orchestrated his humiliation, and Seth, his son, had let it happen. Conversations dimmed the moment the double doors at the end of the hall swung open. It wasn't just the sound of hinges. It was the way the air shifted, like the whole room recognized authority before it even spoke. A woman entered, her stride confident, emerald silk trailing like liquid light behind her. 2 men in discreet black suits kept a respectful distance at her flanks. Heads turned, whispers ignited, glasses stilled halfway to lips. Reuben's fork froze above his plate of bread and butter. His chest constricted. He knew that face. The woman from the roadside. But this wasn't the grease-smudged traveler he'd met an hour earlier. This was someone transformed. Hair smoothed into a perfect knot, earrings catching the chandelier light like small constellations. She scanned the room with the ease of someone who expected to be obeyed, then let her gaze fall directly on him. A smile, warm, familiar, lit her face. "I told you we might see each other again," she said, loud enough for half the hall to hear. The crowd turned, following her line of sight until every eye landed on Reuben, sitting among waiters and busboys. Murmurs rippled like wind across a field. Mabel's face drained of color, then flushed crimson as she stumbled forward. "Ms. Howard," her voice pitched too high, the brittle sound of panic. "What an honor. What an unexpected pleasure. If I'd known, Esther Howard." The name fell from whispered lips across the room like a revelation. Founder of Howard Green Energy. Billionaire. Philanthropist. A woman whose signature could resurrect or ruin entire firms. Mabel's practiced smile wavered as she gestured desperately toward the main table. "Please join us. We'll clear a seat at the head, of course." But Esther did not move toward Mabel. She walked the length of the hall with deliberate steps, her emerald gown sweeping the floor, until she reached Reuben's corner table. Without hesitation, she pulled out the chair beside him and sat down. Gasps broke across the hall. "Much more comfortable here," Esther said simply, smoothing the silk over her knees. "Besides, I prefer good company." She glanced at Reuben, her smile softening. "Why is your father sitting with the staff?" she asked, voice calm, but carrying across the hall like a challenge dressed in velvet. Mabel's lips parted. She laughed nervously, but the sound was brittle, breaking. "Oh, it's a family matter. We had limited space." Esther tilted her head. "Limited space at a table for 60? The silence sharpened. Guests leaned in, hungry for the spectacle. Seth shifted by the bar, whiskey glass trembling in his hand. His eyes met Reuben's for the first time that night. Shame flooded his face. Esther rose, champagne glass lifted high. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice unshaken, "I'd like to make an announcement." The hall hushed. Even the piano stilled mid-note. "This man, Mr. Reuben Gray, stopped on the side of a highway tonight to help a stranger in need. He asked for nothing. He expected nothing. And yet, when he came here to his own family's table, he was cast aside." Every syllable cut through the room. Reuben's ears rang. "My company invests in leaders who value dignity and decency above profit. What I've seen tonight tells me everything I need to know." She turned, gaze cutting through Mabel like glass. "Gray Environmental Consulting will never have a place with us." Mabel's breath caught, a sound like glass fracturing. "And as for Mr. Gray," Esther smiled again, this time with something fierce beneath the warmth, "I will see to it that his seat, wherever he chooses to sit, is never again at the edge of the room." The toast rang out in silence. Glasses did not clink. Seth's whiskey slipped from his hand and shattered against the marble floor. Reuben sat frozen, the silver-wrapped gift still at his feet, the eyes of the room burning into him. For the first time in years, he did not bow his head. He lifted it, slow and steady, and met every gaze. Martha's voice came to him like a whisper. "Walk in like you belong there." And tonight, for the first time, he did. The room did not return to normal after Esther's words. Conversations tried to sputter back to life but failed. Laughter sounded hollow, glasses clinked with hesitation. The glittering chandelier light seemed colder now, exposing cracks in the perfection Mabel had built. Reuben remained seated, hands folded on the table, heart pounding so loud it drowned the piano's return. He didn't need to speak. The silence around him carried more weight than any protest could. Simon slipped from his chair first. He hesitated under his mother's glare, then broke into a run, little shoes clicking against polished floor. Grace followed, her pigtails bouncing as she rushed to the corner table. They flung themselves against Reuben's suit, arms tight around his neck, their voices muffled in the fabric. "Grandpa," Grace whispered, fierce in her smallness. Reuben held them close, eyes stinging. For the first time in years, he felt something stronger than humiliation. He felt chosen. Mabel stood frozen, her smile cracked wide enough to show the tremor beneath. Seth moved toward his children, but stopped short, watching the way they clung to their grandfather as though they'd been waiting their whole lives for this moment. Esther lifted her glass once more. "To kindness," she said simply, and this time, the clinking that followed was hesitant but real. Some guests raised their glasses with respect. Others lowered their eyes, ashamed to be part of the farce they'd witnessed. Reuben whispered into his grandchildren's hair, "Don't ever be afraid to sit with someone, no matter where they've been placed." His voice was low, but Esther, seated beside him, caught the words. She gave the smallest nod, as though sealing them into permanence. The rest of the evening blurred. Mabel tried to salvage her celebration. Laughter pitched too high, words brittle as glass. Seth followed in her shadow, shoulders caved inward, as if the room had shrunk to a cage. But Reuben didn't notice. He had Simon on one knee, Grace on the other, listening as they told him about school, about a science project, about a song they were learning for class. The hall around them shimmered with wealth, but in that corner, time slowed to something richer. When it was finally over, Reuben stepped into the cool night air with his grandchildren still at his side. The valet brought the Buick around, out of place among the Jaguars and Mercedes, but tonight it felt like a chariot. Seth caught up to him by the car. His eyes glistened with something between apology and shame. He opened his mouth, searching for words. Reuben only shook his head gently. "Next time, son," he said. Not bitter, not angry, only tired. "Next time." He helped Simon and Grace into the back seat, then looked once more at the glittering facade of Lakeview Manor. Inside, Mabel's party was collapsing under the weight of its own cruelty. Outside, the night was wide and quiet, waiting. Reuben slid into the driver's seat. The silver gift still lay unopened on the passenger side, ribbon intact. He left it there. Some things weren't meant to be unwrapped. The Buick's engine turned over, steady and sure. As he drove away, the children's laughter filled the car, spilling into the night like music Martha might have hummed. For the first time in years, Reuben did not feel like an exile. He felt like a man going home. 13.